Hi, everybody. So we're switching gears this week with a discussion on Doolittle's Raiders and information that I found in one of the historical newspaper databases. And this would be something that would be used in the second half of an American history class. As most of you obviously are aware, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on the morning of December 7th, 1941, leaving 2,403 men dead and over 1,100 injured. And while those were the obvious result of the attack, the less obvious result was the effect that the attack had on American morale. And that leads us into the reprisals that became Doolittle's raid. So 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt calls his military leaders together and demands a plan for action. He wants the Japanese paid back for Pearl Harbor, and he wanted the United States to kind of regain some of their pride on the world stage. And this is where Doolittle and his raid ends up becoming a reality when ultimately it leads to 70 men taking off on a 287-foot runway off of an aircraft carrier and heading out on the morning of April 18th to attack their Japanese target. The attack itself really did not have significant effect on the Japanese or the targets that they were hit. The planes were so weighed down with fuel that they really couldn't carry a lot of bombs ultimately, but it was a moral victory. And even more so when most of the Americans were able to return safely from that mission. However, not all did return. There were 2 Americans that died in a crash when their aircraft ran out of fuel, and 2 that were ultimately executed because they had landed in Japanese-held territory. There were 4 Americans who were held hostage as prisoners of war. And those were the Americans that were the topic of the article that was published in October of 1942 by the Associated Press, which explains that the Japanese and the Germans, and they referred to them in not very flattering racial slurs, were going to take out their frustration over American aggression on those 4 prisoners of war. And so this was actually published throughout the United States. There's many things that can be done with newspaper articles such as that, but for the sake of time, I'll wrap up the story and say Doolittle's Raiders, the men who participated in that, had reunions every year. Some of the reunions were actually held not far from where I live, and the cups that they had where they would toast every year, that their names were engraved on and has a beautiful case that the cups are all held in. That's actually held at the United States Air Force Museum, which is about 5 minutes from my house. So it's something I've been able to see. The last thing I wanted to tell you and share with you is that the last of Doolittle's Raiders did not actually pass away until January of 2010. So I'm sure that there's some amazing stories that that man was able to tell his family before passing on. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed Doolittle's Raiders.